Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Tuesday afternoon. On today's show, we'll get into more Texas football as we get ready for a big game against Kansas as Texas takes on the best Big 12 opponent so far. It's a second. Kansas is better. The ranked opponent you're taking on this week. Going to be a big game. We'll get more into that. Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day. Lance Leipold was on Jim Rome. Play some of that interview as we get you more ready for Kansas. Of course, all of your text all show long. 512-337-3776. Little NBA news today. Maybe get into it. A little NFL news. Whatever you guys feel like talking about, we'll talk about on the show today. 512-337-3776 is the text number. We may be changing that up. We may be changing it up a little bit later this week, but as of right now, 512-337-3776 to text with me right now. You guys drive the show. We'll keep it going. You guys drive the show with me every single day. And I appreciate it. Let's get into talking about some Texas football this week. You got the win over Baylor, and normally we try and take a little bit more time to look at the win at Baylor. We'll kind of look back at last week, but we'll keep moving forward against a big matchup against Kansas. This is a team with a quarterback where you're gonna have to be prepared for anything. Jalen Daniels is a guy that we know can run the ball. We know can be elusive. He hadn't really shown it in non-conference play. He didn't have a lot of rushing yards, so it wasn't as big of an issue. He was doing a lot with his arms in week 1 of Big 12 play against BYU. They kind of shut down the passing game a little bit better, so he did use his legs some more. I don't know if that was something where you were trying to save it for Big 12. I don't think – I'll give Leipold and Kansas credit that I don't think they're going to come out with the – Dave Aranda, win one game, let's beat Texas. I don't think that's quite their MO this year. I think they want to be ranked. I think they want to be competing for a Big 12 championship. So you want to beat Texas, but it's not a win one game type of season for this Kansas team. This is a let's go play a game. We believe we can hang with the number 3 team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns. I think they can because of past experience. I think they know they can hang with Texas. Now this Texas team's better. This Texas team's much more equipped for it. But they know they can hang. So this is not the same kind of look that you're going to get a lot of the Big 12. If we have to beat Texas, this is the biggest game on our schedule. I think Lance Leipold has this team a little bit more ready to be consistent, to push through. They're going to get pumped up. You're coming to Austin. You're coming into a hostile territory. But I think that, it's good for them to be ranked. It's good that Texas can look at this on the schedule and say, this is a big game. Sark was asked straight up about it. We'll play this. Sark was asked straight up if it was a trap game because you do have Oklahoma coming up. And normally Oklahoma is the game everybody's looking forward to. Normally you say, Texas OU is the weekend and whatever you play before it, and Kansas isn't that team. I don't think that is the case as much this year. I think Kansas is a legit team that could compete for the Big 12 championship. I think there's only 3 ranked Big 12 teams right now. I think there's 2 more that could be on the edge. They may be more qualified, some Pac-12 teams that are in there. But, that's my media bias. We'll get rid of the media bias of how there's 6 ranked Pac-12 teams. Just nonsense. But I do think that the Kansas is a good team. And the fact that they are now ranked, the fact that they are undefeated coming into this game, really makes it a lot easier for Texas to focus on this game. Sark was asked, though, if this is a trap game, and here is his response.
I appreciate that question. I feel like it was a setup, Ed, but so thank you. Thanks. I think this is a top 25 matchup of 2 undefeated teams, both very good. And in our mind, like we posted today, this is we're playing for first place, right? And our goal is to get to Arlington in December to compete for a Big 12 championship game. And this game's going to matter a lot in if we have that opportunity or not. And so this game has got our undivided attention. Again, we talked about it at length with the team this morning, that our focus is on the next mission. And Kansas is the next mission, and they need all of our attention. They're a very good football team, and so I don't feel that at all. I haven't heard one word about next week. And so that's a good thing. It's not like I had to stop anybody anywhere to say, hey, no. Our guys are focused, and they know what it's going to take. And all we have to do is turn the tape on of Kansas. They're 4-0 for a reason. It's not by fluke. These guys are playing very good football right now.
And that's really where I'm going to start is what's so important about this game for Texas is not discounting the Alabama game. Alabama has a good enough offense. We know that Milroe is, not the quarterback they're used to having, but they still have a very good run game. They still have some electric wide receivers. But I feel like this is the first game where your defense may be more important than your offense. In every game, defense is extremely important. You want to have that balanced attack. This is a game for the defense where they should be pumped up because they really get to strut their stuff this week. They get to come out. They got to work hard this week. But this defense, if you're able to come out and play a really solid game against a Kansas team that people are thinking highly of right now, and you're able to kind of slow them down, if you're able to slow down Jalen Daniels, and you're able to show that this defense is not just good for the Big 12, they are good. They're in a next-level defense. I think that's what PK wants to show. I think that's what Texas wants to show. And so you're going to need everybody in all your different positions to step up and play at a higher level and really shut things down. And depending on where you're looking on this defense, I think there's certain ways you can attack. We talked yesterday about the deep threat, and that people have found if you can kind of get your guys and switch around and get your speedy receivers onto a safety, you got a shot. That Texas is going to have to clear that up because Kansas is going to be coming after that, right? You know Kansas is going to be trying to have explosive plays. They don't necessarily want drawn-out drives with a Texas team that is bigger, that is going to come at you and is going to wear you down as the game goes on. They don't necessarily want to put Jalen Daniels out there in the fourth quarter with an O-line that's kind of beat up from taking so many plays, and Texas being able to shuffle and rotate. And Sark talked on Monday about the safety position because he's getting a little bit of flack now because teams are seeing that Jay can go over the top, and people are seeing that they can go over the top. And Sark has been rotating safeties. He doesn't really like to rotate his wide receivers. Even with C.J. Baxter, I don't know how much of an injury it is, but he doesn't rotate his running backs a ton. He definitely doesn't really want to rotate offensive linemen. He doesn't really want to rotate a lot of positions. But he is pretty strongly that he wants to get a lot of these safeties playing time. And I know he likes to switch them out for different packages and different personnel groups. But Sark likes to switch out his safeties. Here's Sark talking about that. Something that you're going to have to watch this week to see if the right personnel groups are in, because it's something that Kansas is definitely going to be looking at.
No, Catalan's not on a pitch count. We rotate our guys predicated on, like I said, I think we're 5 deep at that position, and we're extremely fortunate. And I think that not only serves us well short-term in-game, I think it serves us well long-term throughout a grueling season. We've got some really veteran players. We've got some young players. I thought Derek Williams had his best game Saturday, playing at a high level, a lot of confidence in covering people. So the game sometimes and the style of game dictate kind of who plays more, when, and how. But we're fortunate at that position.
So the safeties, you're going to need, and this is, I think, part of the problem, is Catalan's out there, but I think he doesn't fully trust him in everything. I think he really likes Catalan in some situations, but he may get beat over the top. Jaron Thompson, definitely we know he's great in covering up. He's great in a lot of things, but he may get beat over the top. Michael Taft, amazing football IQ, may get beat over the top. So I think he's trying to work some of these younger guys in because he knows he may need them against certain teams this year, and Kansas might be one of them. That he may switch up and kind of change that safety rotation a little bit more to try and get some guys in on 3rd and longs, where that they're going to try and take these shots, or maybe even first downs when they may take a shot over the top. Any play where you think, okay, they're definitely, this is a play where they may go for it. They may take that big shot on us. You're going to have to, you may be switching out safeties. I think he's been trying to play that angle a little bit and figure out who he feels good at deep coverage and have them in the right place. And then, when you have 3rd and shorts, you don't necessarily play them as much in those situations. That's where you can bring in a Taft or Jaron Thompson that can do a really good job of covering up and bringing you there. And as long as they're able to keep the guys in front of them, they're doing pretty well. But the safeties are going to be an issue because we know that that Leipold and this Kansas team and Jalen Daniels are going to attack them. The defensive line, I'm not as worried about. We saw what they did against Baylor. And yes, Baylor, Dave Aranda likes to recruit a different type of player. He doesn't necessarily like the bigger guys. Kansas gets a little bit bigger. You get them cornflake boys out in Kansas. You may be able to get a little more out there. Here's Sark talking about the defensive line.
I think Sweat and Murphy are critical. and I don't, I hate saying that because sometimes I feel like I'm diminishing the value of an Alfred Collins or a Trill Carter or a Vernon Broughton. Vernon probably had arguably his best game Saturday as well. So and then we have some young guys on the come too. Dre Bledsoe is coming. Sadir Mitchell probably had his best week of practice last week. So I love that group. But those two guys, their veteran leadership that they provide, their ability to make plays at critical moments. This is 2 games in a row now where Sweat, or at least 2 games this year, where Sweat has made a 4th down stop, literally just defeating a single block. It wasn't about scheme. It was him defeating his man to make the play. And so they're impactful players. They can provide pass rush. But probably most importantly is their maturity. Those guys have both grown up a lot in our time, and they're very helpful for the younger players.
And maturity is going to be a big factor come Saturday against this Kansas team, against the Jalen Daniels that, again, didn't run the ball a lot against non-conference. Didn't run the ball, didn't try to scramble as much, really tried to be a passer. And I think he's going to try and be a passer against Texas first as well. But we know that some of those plays can break down. We know some of those plays, if your defense and your secondary, the secondaries look pretty good. Ryan Watts at points has, been a little loose, but I think those are play calls. And Manny Muhammad's been loose, but I think that's a play call. Jahdae Barron sometimes comes out of the games. I don't know what that's about. I think, I know they're doing big packages. They'll pull Jahdae Barron out. I think you leave Jahdae Barron in a game like this as well. If Kansas wants to beat you just running the ball with running backs, you have to take that. And you need your defensive line to step up in that case. I think you need to trust your defensive line in this scenario to keep your as many DBs and as many, game-changing players on the field as you can. You may not want to switch to another linebacker in that situation. I love the linebackers. We'll get to them in a minute. But I'm more worried about keeping Jahdae Barron out there to try and not let anybody get behind him because we know that he is just an electric player in that secondary. But on the defensive line, I trust those guys enough right now. I trust Byron Murphy. I trust T'Vondre Sweat. Alfred Collins and those other guys are able to come up because you have the guys taking the front of the load. And, we'll talk about Byron Murphy. We got here on the text line, best 2-way player, Byron Murphy. I'm with you. With Travis Hunter out, so Travis Hunter's going to take it if he's playing. He might be better than Byron Murphy, being a shutdown corner and a great wide receiver. But Byron Murphy, best 2-way player. Here's start talking about Byron Murphy since you brought him up on the text line.
Yeah, well, Murph, he's kind of built like a pit bull, man. He is strong. He's got really strong shoulders. He's extremely quick and powerful. He's got a very high football IQ, and he plays hard. And so those are all really cool prerequisites that you want to have as a defensive lineman, especially with his stature. The one thing he provides for us offensively is A, the football IQ is helpful, but B, the athleticism. He's got really good feet. His change of direction is excellent. You see that at D-line play, but you see it on offense too. I mean, we ran a lead play Saturday on the goal line, and he was able to kind of adjust off of it and kick the defender out to get Brooks in the end zone. Obviously, we saw the hands a couple weeks ago, so it takes athleticism too. It's one thing to know what to do and how to do it, but you have to have the ability, and he definitely has the ability.
Yeah, that's the difference of, I think, this Texas team in general this season and year 3 of this regime with Sark, with PK, that you're seeing more guys that we knew had the ability to do it, but now they have the scheme down, they have the planning down, they know what they're, the game film, they're watching that better. All of these things are being able to come together, but the ability was always there because you're recruiting these 4 or 5 stars that have that ability, but you need to be able to, get them in the right position to win. They seem to be doing that this year. But I'm saying this game against Kansas, I trust the defensive line a little bit more. I don't necessarily try and switch my personnel groups so much to stop the run against this Kansas team when they try and come in big. Maybe if you're talking about on 3rd and short, you do it. But I'd like to keep Jahdae Barron out there a little bit more. I know it's a way to kind of get him out of the game is to go big and put some more tight ends, and you can still throw the ball or Jalen Daniels can run. But Jalen Daniels running and Jalen Daniels throwing brings me to the lineup, the group that I think is going to be the most important of this game. If we're going to say what's the most important group, it's not anybody on offense. I think offense is going to be okay. You're going to be able to play against, Kansas. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. But I think that the offense will be okay. I think that if you're really looking at on the defensive line, I'm not as worried about the defensive line. I know the safeties, you got to have them there, but I'm not going to say they're important because I'm not sure, because I don't know. I know what that safety, I feel like I know what the safety ceiling is. So they're going to be important. But who I think is going to be really important in this game is linebacker play. Because if the defensive line can go do their job, like I'm trusting them to do their job, then that linebacker play of not allowing Jalen Daniels the window, so he's going to have to throw into coverage, and you let your top defensive backs go make plays because Jalen Daniels has to throw it now, because an Anthony Hill or David Benda or whoever does not overcommit and does not allow him to get out. I want to see a big game from Anthony Hill here. I want to see a real big game from Anthony Hill where he's able to not try and be the star player, but still be the star player. We know Jalen Ford can do. We know he's going to go up there and try and make some big plays, but you want to be able to see them make the right reads, that they're able to get down and stay in between and stay in that spot, that if it does go into a run, if Jalen Daniels does try and push it, or if it is a run play, they're able to come up. But if they're able to drop back and help out that secondary, let those safeties fall a little bit deeper back to not let guys get over the top of them, that middle ground for me is what's going to be so important against this Kansas team, because we do need the safeties to stay back so they don't get beat over the top. But we also need to be able to make sure Jalen Daniels does not get it going. The linebacker is what we need. Anthony Hill, I want to see a ton of good plays from Anthony Hill, and I don't want to see him over-committing. You know, Jalen Ford's going to be the guy linebacker. We know that. So you don't have to be trying to compete. You've got your time coming up. Just be solid. Just be, if you're put on a QB spy, or if you just, even if you're not a spy, but you're kind of, you need to stay on him. Stay on him. Another guy, David Benda. David Benda had a really good game against Baylor. That was the best game I've seen him play. He's a guy that has progressed. He is somebody that you just love to see what he's been able to do. You love his story. You love that he's now playing at a level and being so important to this team that I don't think David Benda is going to be a spy. I don't think he's going to be in that position. But I think David Benda is going to be a guy who can go on those plays where Kansas tries to stretch it to the outside a bit more, where you can then leave your defensive line to not have to be and try and stretch that defensive line out too much. I think David Benda is going to be a big game. Here was Sark yesterday talking about David Benda, his story, and how inspirational and how great David Benda being a big player on this team, what it can mean for Texas.
I love David Benda's story. You know, in this day and age of college football, I think we're diminishing and losing the value of perseverance. And he is a prime example of perseverance. That, you know, for 2 years he's at best a role player. You know, spotty special teams play. Some games, you know, plays a few snaps, some not. But the stick-to-itiveness, the work ethic, the commitment to the program. Like I said, he had his best offseason this offseason, his best spring, his best summer. You know, and in the end, he's earning a degree from the University of Texas, which was part of the reason he chose to come to school here. Yeah, he's a frontline player for us now. He's a team leader. Hopefully that we celebrate those guys more nowadays, because they're starting to become a dying breed. We don't see those guys as much anymore. It's nowadays, he's not starting as a true freshman or a true sophomore, so what's wrong? Well, he's developed, you know, and development is a big key component to building your program and sustaining your program. But the players need to recognize development too. And I think that's something that David recognized, that he continued to get better. He continued to work. I think credit Jeff Choate, our linebacker coach, for the work that he's done with him. And hopefully there's more examples of that as we move through this era of the transfer portal, that those guys that have that level of perseverance off the field to stick to something that they committed to doing, I think carry that perseverance onto the field with them as well. And I think David's just a really prime example of that.
David Benda, for me, is going to be a big player in this game. He's somebody that remembers losing to Kansas. He's somebody that has worked very hard to help make Texas be what they are this season. He's somebody that embodies what it is that we all love about college sports. He's somebody that this matters to. This really does matter to. And playing at home against Kansas. We know we can say it's a trap game. They're number 24 in the country. You can't look past this team. When you watch the game film, you know how good they are. Hell, this could be, right now, this is your what, third hardest game on the schedule? Because they're the only other ranked team you're playing right now. Alabama, OU, and Kansas. That's your ranked teams right now. Now, we know K-State may get back into it. TCU may get back into it. Somebody else in the Big 12, hell, might step up. But right now, that's your third best opponent as chosen by the AP is Kansas. You can't look past your third best opponent, rank-wise. I don't think they are. But I think that linebacker play, Anthony Hill being there is a big point of it. And, not letting Jalen Daniels use his experience to take over a freshman, to come out there and play a solid game. Jalen Ford to be Jalen Ford. Show why he should have been the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year. And David Benda. And I know what happened to David's G. It's just like the P in Pflugerville, man. You just got to get the PF out. David Benda is going to be a big piece of this game for me. I want to see it. I want to see it good. We know Byron Murphy is going to be good. We know Tavondre Sweat's going to kill it. Jahdae Barron will play on the outside, going to be big. All those guys. That defense is big. This is a defensive game for Texas. Defense is going to matter. This may be your best offensive opponent. I know the offense is better this year at Oklahoma, but I think Kansas is probably better offense right now because their defense ain't there. We know Oklahoma wants to play defense. Alabama wants to play defense. Kansas wants to play offense. They don't want to play defense, but they want to play offense. They may be the one. They may be the team that is the most balanced, that you're not going to be able to put up 70 on. But they're also going to play offense. The defense, this is it. This is PK's test this week. If he can get through this defense can focus and go into that, really show something big going into the rest of the season. Getting into that, I think, this leads into the poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Text line 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line number. Join the show. Here's a poll of the day, guys. We asked yesterday who the MVP was in the game. I believe you guys went with Jonathan Brooks. Quinn Ewers was up there. Byron Murphy was up there. Jalen Ford was, I believe, fourth, which, if that tells you, if Jalen Ford, who had an amazing game, was your fourth in that poll, that there was a lot of good play in that game. But here's what I want to ask you today. So we just talked about all these different position groups for Texas, all these different things that could be something for Texas and that need to show up. The safeties, the defensive backs, the D-line, the linebackers. We talked about that. We know on offense, you still have to be able to run the ball. The O-line's got to play well. You can't have penalties, man. I'll play that clip tomorrow. Start talking about penalties and why at home they have more penalties on the road. Seems silly to me, but that's what it's been. Here's a question. 512-337-3776. What position group needs to improve the most for Texas this week? What position group needs to improve the most for Texas this week? Where do you want to see the most improvement? I think the linebackers have played well, but maybe you want to see it there. Maybe you want to see this linebacker group led by Jalen Ford, who should have been the Defensive Player of the Year last year. Maybe this group, you say, I want to see them improve. Maybe it's the safeties. Maybe you want to see the safeties come out and have that big game. And, the rotation has been set up for this. And then now the rotation works. And Catalan and Jaron Thompson and Taft and Dave Williams. And everybody has a great game. And they all put together. Defensive backs, Jahdae Barron, Manny Muhammad, Ryan Watts. All those guys are able to get out there and maybe get a couple picks and turnovers. We know I don't know the D-line could be even in this conversation of improving. But if they can, man, it would be pretty crazy to see that. Or is it on the offense? What do you tell me? Tell me what it is, why you think they need to improve, and give me whatever you think. Whatever else you think about this Texas game against Kansas, whatever y'all want to talk about, that's what we have on the text line. 512-337-3776. And I know special teams. That's the easy one. That's the one we're going to take for granted, that they need to be able to not muff the punts. We know that. But you can put it in there. That's the one. Hit special teams. 512-337-3776. Keep those texts coming in. What do y'all want to talk about? What Texas, do you have any questions about this Texas game? What are you looking forward to? Any predictions, any worries about Texas versus Kansas? Anything else coming up about the Cowboys? We'll get into some more Cowboys talk a little bit later in the NFL. You got anything for that? 512-337-3776. We come back. We'll get into some of your texts. We'll talk a little bit more Texas football, and we'll get into Jim Rome had Lance Leopold on the show on Monday. We will play you some of that interview of him talking to the Kansas head coach as we get further ready for Kansas versus Texas on Saturday. Right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 101.9 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back in the sports complex here on the Horn. Keeping the music rolling with theme of the week. It is National Dog Week. So we're playing dog theme songs and songs with dog in the title and whatever else with dogs. Dog adjacent songs we're playing all week here on the Sports Complex for National Dog Week. You can text in your dog pictures that were making me happy yesterday. 512-337-3776. If you got a lovely dog, my boy Lou hangs out with me here in the studio every day. I started bringing him around. Other dogs were here at the radio station. They say, bring yours in. And then I brought him in one day, and then I didn't bring him in the next day, and they're like, where's Lou? And now if I don't bring him in, they don't like me as much as they like the dog. So he has to come every day now. So he comes in and he does good. Doesn't bark during the show. He's a good boy. But yeah, it's National Dog Week here. 512-337-3776 is the text line. If you want to send in whatever you want to talk about Texas football, we're talking about what position you want to see most improved, what position group you want to see most improved this week against Kansas. It is going to be a big test. You are taking on the number 24 team in the country, and they should probably be higher. I know it's probably just the fact that they're Kansas means that they're, people don't believe in them. But this is a team that, this is part of having that transfer portal and NIL. That programs like Kansas are now able to start pushing, are starting to be able to get the game, get a little bit, more even for some of these schools to be able to get guys that maybe, don't want to go to Kansas straight out of high school, that they think it's a basketball school, but they're changing that narrative now. It's always been hard to change it because, by the time these guys get anybody in there and, they were trying to, how many times we just saw people going trying to get JUCO guys and do whatever you could, but they weren't always necessarily the culture fit. What Lance Leipold done there has been amazing. So, maybe Kansas doesn't get the reputation. I don't know why Oregon State and Washington State do. That still blows my mind that the Pac-2 is both still in the top 25. Oregon State lose the game to Washington State, and they go, well, we ranked them both too high, but they're both still in. I still don't get the Pac-12 love this year. I don't know if they just feel bad for them because the conference broke up, but they're giving them a lot. 6 teams in the top 25, 4 in the top 10, the most in the top 10. They have, and they're the bottom 4 in the top 10, but the most in the top 10, the Pac-12. Crazy. SEC is the only conference with more teams in the top 25 than the Pac-12. Crazy. But Big 12, 3, one of those is Kansas. We take them on this week. Lance Leipold is the head coach. He has done an amazing job at Kansas. He has done an amazing job. And again, I'll tell you, we know the easy answer on the text line is going to be special teams. And I can get that. I'd like to get you another answer too. I'd like you to have something else other than that. And if they don't muff those 2 punts, special teams did just fine. I get it's 2 muff punts. That's a big deal. It's 2 turnovers or 3 muff punts and 2 turnovers in there. But I get that. I get special teams. I'm trying to get you to go a little deeper. We'll talk about something else. But yes, I agree with you. Special teams definitely does need to improve. You got to clean up the turnover margin. You can't be turning the ball over like that. Especially, you were able to do it against Baylor because they're not very good. But you cannot do that against a Kansas team because that is probably 14 points that you would have given up in that game. I agree with you. But whatever else you want to say, send in whatever groups you want to see. Tell me why. And with special teams, we know they had a bad game against Baylor. We'll get to your text in just a minute. I do want to play this interview though. Lance Leipold was on Jim Rome, which you can hear here on the Horn weekdays 11 to 2 in the afternoon before Rich Eisen, before me. And Lance Leipold was on the show talking about Kansas football, kind of getting you ready for the week, getting you ready for Kansas football, because this is, it's not a trap game for us. We're going to be ready. We're going to show the respect, and the fans are going to show up big at DKR on Saturday. Make sure people know, make sure Kansas knows this is Texas home. There is no trap game. Texas is going to win. Here's an interview that Jim Rome had with Lance Leipold on Monday, right here on the Horn and Jim Rome's own show.
Joining us right now is the head football coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. He's in his 3rd season in that capacity. The Jayhawks opened up Big 12 conference play by beating BYU 38-27. They improved to 4-0 on the season. They are ranked 24th in this week's AP poll, and they've got a huge one coming up this weekend. They take on number 3 Texas in Austin Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We are joined by the head coach of the Jayhawks, Lance Leipold. Lance, it is so good to have you back on. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jim. Great to be with you again. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. It's good to have you back, Coach. Thanks so much. Before we talk about this weekend, why don't we take a look back? You rallied from that 3-point halftime deficit. You beat BYU in the Cougars' Big 12 debut. What was your biggest takeaway from the win? And then how pleased were you with the toughness and the grit that your team showed in the second half?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. It was the toughness and grit. We've challenged our guys that we needed to be more physical on both sides of the ball this season. They have. We had two defensive touchdowns in the game, one by Kenny Logan right there to get us started in the second half. But Jimmy, the other part is the experience and poise of this group. We're a pretty young football team 2 years ago, youngest Power 5 team in the country. And now that experience is taking over for us. And there was a presence in the locker room at halftime that really kind of helped us take over the second half.
Lance, you and I have talked about what you inherited and what you've built. And when you talk about the experience, is there now an expectation that something good is going to happen as opposed to something bad is going to happen? And what's that say about the culture that you've built?
Well, it does. It says something about how our players have responded and to what we expect of them. And they've worked extremely hard. And I'm awful proud of them. I'm proud of our staff because we've gone in at halftime, Jim, and it's been like a morgue in there or a high level of frustration. And now this group and through our leaders in our program have really taken over. And you see these type of changes in the second half. So that's exciting. And Now we got to be able to get back and go on the road, play an awful tough football team.
Awfully tough football team. Lance Leipold joining us. When you and I spoke back in April during spring practice, you said your quarterback, Jalen Daniels, belonged in the conversation of best quarterbacks in college football. It's really high praise given how deep the position is this year. He had another big game. He had 3 touchdowns. He had no INTs on Saturday. He's completing 75% of his passes this season. Is it time for Heisman voters to start paying more attention to what he's doing?
Well, I think they're going to get a chance on Saturday, and that's going to be big for him and our football team. But, to us, he's a pretty special player. And I'm watching some of those highlights there, his touch and what he's done. I said also in that game, Jim, I think he did a great job with his legs of scrambling, keeping plays alive and getting us some key first downs. And, he's the leader of our offense and of our football team. And he's, we think he's an awful special player.
All right, so we've been talking about Saturday. Since you referenced that, let me just jump ahead to it. You're going to face one of the most skilled teams in the country. You head to Austin to take on number 3 Texas. An absolutely incredible challenge, but an amazing opportunity for Kansas. You're going for your first road win against a ranked opponent since 1995. I know you're watching film. What impresses you most about Texas as you break this thing down?
Well, I think what jumps at you offensively, Steve Sarkisian is one of the best play callers in the country. We pride ourselves here, Jim, about that we spread the ball around, a lot of personnel groupings, a lot of motions and shifts. They do the same thing, and they do an excellent job, and they've got speed and athleticism in every spot, a big up physical offensive line. Defensively, I think the biggest things that keep changing. I think their defensive front's playing at a high level, very physical group, athletic all over in the back 7. So as you said, what a great opportunity for the Kansas Jayhawks to go down there and being ranked and playing a ranked team such as the Longhorns.
I mean, it's incredible. Lance, going back to your offense for a minute, I think you guys also have a lot of balance and do a lot of things really well. It goes without saying, as much pride and as grateful as you are to have the quarterback that you have, it also helps to have a solid running attack. You guys pounded out 221 yards on the ground, led by Devin Neal, who had 91 yards against BYU. How pleased are you with his play specifically and the work of the big dudes up front?
Well, again, Devin's probably, if Jalen's 1A, he's 1B in this thing because of his abilities to carry the ball. But the thing he's a complete back now. He's been able to make plays in the receiving game. He's a solid pass protector. But again, he's the threat because for us to be effective, as you said, we want to be balanced. But for a third-year player, he's playing at a high level once again. We have his backup is back healthy, and Daniel Highshaw, and Daniel's averaging close to 7 yards a carry as well. So the 1-2 punch of those guys are going to be needed. But again, a nice compliment to what Jalen and our passing game does.
We're talking Jayhawk football, huge matchup. Kansas at Texas coming up this weekend. You know, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you about the defense, and you mentioned that yourself off the top. College football obviously is so much about high scoring and offenses that are high octane and high powered. It seems to me defensive achievements do get overlooked. Your team forced those 3 BYU turnovers. The defense did score 14 points. In other words, a huge day for your defense. Is this one of the most opportunistic defenses that you've coached? And then what's working best on that side of the ball in your mind?
Well, that's a loaded one. You know, I think it's right up there right now. And again, we haven't been that type of defense in our first 2 seasons. And we've made an emphasis on the physicality and being more aggressive. The nice thing is the whole back 7 is back. For 2 straight years. Kobe Bryant was just named Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. You know, he had the interception and the forced fumble for a touchdown. You know, we played with 3 guys in the secondary down in Austin 2 years ago, Jim, and I don't know if anybody weighed over 165 pounds. This group has grown, they've matured, they've become stronger, and the game slows down for them a little bit, and they're taking advantage of it with some aggressiveness.
You know, Lance, you talk about, and because you and I have had conversations, I'm really I'm really intrigued by the transformation of the program. Every coach I talk to talks about culture. I'm curious how this works. Like, do you get a complete buy-in from the players and then the wins naturally follow? Or do you only get that complete buy-in after you have the wins? Which comes first, or can you not have one without the other?
I don't know if you can have one without the other. I think what this program went through that really helped us was they found that we were going to hold them accountable with structure and accountability on and off the field in every facet of their life. And it was going to be consistent. And I think that's what young men want. They want to be treated fairly, coached. They want to be given the opportunity, but we were going to hold them accountable from class attendance and tutoring, from weigh-ins with the nutritionists to themselves in the weight room. And then when they start seeing some improvement, maybe personally or holistically as a team, some of that buy-in really skyrockets. And I think that's what aligned for us right now.
I was going to say, it sounds holistic to me is what that is. So Lance, you know how this goes, right? You were rewarded with that contract extension in November. It runs through the 2029 season. But when I say you know how this goes, what I mean is big-time college sports, the more success you have, the more your name is going to get connected to coaching openings. This time it's Michigan State. I know you're focused on Texas, and because of that, you don't want distractions of any sort. So how do you handle the speculation internally? In other words, is it something you address with your players who I'm guessing probably have come across it on social media?
I was hoping we'd get through this interview, Jim, without that. But, of course, I know you're going to be on top of it. But, you know, I haven't at this time because that's all speculation and all those things. They know from last year how myself, my wife, our staff feels about being in Lawrence, Kansas. We have unfinished business here. We have great support from our athletic director, Travis Goff, our chancellor, Doug Girard, and it's the best alignment I've ever been a part of. And then we've got a new stadium on the horizon. We've got new facilities. We've done some renovations. And right now we're going to focus on making this the best football program it can possibly be.
Hey, listen, I was hoping to get through the interview without asking you, but that is the job, as you know. And we also know the grass is not always greener. Lance, I really appreciate it. As I mentioned, it's a terrific challenge, but an awesome opportunity coming up this weekend. Can't wait to see how you guys do on the road. Great to have you back on the show. Appreciate the visit, appreciate the relationship, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it again. And you have a great week, and rock chalk.
Rock chalk. Lance Leipold, he's done an amazing job there. He really has.
We don't need to have rock chalk on this station. Not this week. There's Lance Leipold, head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks football team there on Jim Rome. Airs weekdays 11 to 2 right here on the Horn. Jim Rome does. Getting you ready for Kansas versus Texas. It is kind of a two programs kind of growing at a similar pace, getting ready. But Texas is Texas, Kansas is Kansas, and there is a lot further for Kansas to go. So they're doing well. But we're on a similar trajectory that we're both going we're both moving upward direction. Texas has the skill players. Texas can get it done. They just need to show, and I know we talked about this yesterday, that Texas being the number 3 team in the country doesn't always feel like that. You know, been burned too many times in the recent years that you don't want to get your hopes up. This is going to be a big week to get into that. We're asking you on the text line, 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line. We're asking you what position group you'd like to see improve the most this weekend. We know special teams. We know. You can send it in if you want. Not hating on anybody texting in. You can send that in. We know the special teams. What else? Where do you want to see on the defense or the offense that you think needs to have the most improvement, that you want to see take another step forward? We're going to get to those texts. We're also going to start talking some Cowboys, some NFL, maybe even a little NBA here in the 6 o'clock hour. So if you got anything you want to put in about the NFL, Cowboys, anything you've got on a Tuesday after a day of decompressing and taking in the Cowboys versus Cardinals game that you want to send in to talk about, 512-337-3776. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we will get into your text. We will continue our discussion on Texas, Kansas. We'll start to get into a little NFL talk, and we'll get you to the top of the hour. 6 o'clock, we'll go a little bit more. Sports Complex right here on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. I want to tell you about my friend, Dr. Eckert, and Brain Vault. Brain Vault is a sports science technology founded locally right here in Austin, Texas. It's a patented technology based on proven science delivered through a mouth guard to help reduce the risk of concussion. Brain Vault has used their technology for the past 8 years with roughly 100 NFL players with no concussions reported. It's a good number to have right there. Brain Vault has now brought their technology used in the NFL in a retail version so your sons and daughters can have the same level of protection the NFL players have experienced. Brain Vault is now widely used at the college, high school, and middle school levels. Many of our Texas high school college football players have been wearing the Brain Vault custom mouth guard for the past 2 seasons, and now again this season with tremendous results. They've raved over the fit, the comfort, and protection from their Brain Vault custom mouth guards. Many athletes continue to wear their Brain Vault mouth guards in other high school and middle school sports such as lacrosse, rugby, soccer, basketball, baseball, and cheerleading. I could have used one when I was playing. I know I was pretty reckless on the basketball court. I know in football, one of the reasons why I stopped playing was concussions. I could have used them in a lot of places. Parents love that Brain Vault mouth guards can be worn in all sports, and now their athletes receive that protection throughout their entire athletic career. Brain Vault is currently conducting team and group fittings for college, high school, and middle school athletes in Central Texas. If you're a coach, trainer, booster club member, team parent, visit brainvault.com for more information to set up your team or group fittings today. Brain Vault is one of the safest and most comfortable mouth guards you can wear. Since Brain Vault has a custom fit, players can talk, communicate, and breathe very easily without having to take out their mouth guard. Something important when you're out there playing. We know the teams that we're talking about here on the Horn. You have to be able to communicate. It's going to be a big impact this Saturday. Brain Vault mouth guard can be worn for all sports, can be worn by both male and female athletes. Brainvault.com. Join the movement. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Playing songs about dogs all week here because it is National Dog Week here in America, I guess. I guess it's a national, so I guess it's an American holiday. I do get asked a lot. That is Sublime with I Love My Dog. I do get asked if I name my dog Lou after Sublime. That is not the case. I named my dog after Lou Graham from Foreigner. He is musically based, but when I found him, he was very dirty. It took 4 baths to get him clean, and so he is named Lou after Lou Graham from Foreigner, not from Sublime. So little Patrick Dog info for you on a Tuesday afternoon. We're going to get to your text. 512-337-3776 is the text line. We've asked you guys what position group you'd like to see improve the most that you're kind of worried about a little bit this week. You're not too worried, but you'd like to see them step up and have a big game. It's kind of what we're looking for. We know special teams. We all know special teams. But I'm sure it's going to come up several times. Defensive secondary. We do want to see that secondary. I don't know if the defensive backs have, didn't look necessarily great last week. They did have some good plays, but they weren't. There was plays where they were exposed. I think they played loose a little bit. That was kind of the plan, to stay behind guys. And the secondary was staying behind a little bit more than the safeties were. Safeties still got beat. But I could see that. We want to see a little bit more. Maybe a turnover in the secondary would be nice. Nevada played a good game versus Kansas. Definitely held the QB Daniels down for the most part. Take some film and use that. They did. Nevada did have a good game plan against Kansas. I do think there was something to be said that I think they were kind of holding back Jalon Daniels. He didn't play week 1. I think they were kind of holding him back. Didn't want him to take too many hits before a Big 12 play. Now they're going to air him out a little bit. And especially this week, you are going to let Jalon Daniels go do whatever he has to do to win the game. But I think Lance Leipold, again, he knows this season is not about this week. They want to be able to play for the Big 12 championship. They can lose to Texas and still make that Big 12 championship game. So I think he knows keeping Jalon Daniels healthy, keeping this team going forward is the main goal for Kansas. They're going to come out and give you everything, though. And so I don't think they were necessarily holding out Daniels and not having him run as much for Texas, but I think they were doing it for the Big 12 as a whole. So there may be something that you can pull out of that, but I would use caution. That I don't know if it was all Nevada. Thank you to Longhorn Lubbock for the dog picture. Love the dog pictures on National Dog Week. You want to see the cornerbacks and execution to the best of our collective ability will win the game comfortably. I don't know comfortably. I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable on Saturday. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be fine, but I don't know if I'm comfortable. I'm not going to go with comfortable. R.I.P. Brooks Robinson, famous Baltimore Oriole, an all-time great. I think the Orioles don't need another reason to be good this season. Luckily, he got to see the Orioles start to come on the up, or having a great season. But yeah, rest in peace, Brooks Robinson. Let's get to one more text and we'll take a break. This one's easy, Patrick. Special teams. They've been really good, but 3 muff punts and a missed field goal will get you beat. Yes, it will. Small mistakes and the special teams, which is something that I've raved about. Jeff Banks is one of my favorite coaches. He is a great recruiter. He's a great motivator. But they do need to focus, and I think that is a team that has some younger guys on it in different positions, and maybe they're not as invested in the game because they're not getting in other positions. So they maybe let off a little bit on just making sure they had their assignments perfectly right. But I agree with you. Special teams need to move up. We're going to take a break so we can get back to the top of the hour. We're going to talk some NFL. We're going to talk maybe a little NBA. Throw in a little MLB update for you. We'll try and get to all of that in the 6 o'clock hour. And, of course, more of your text, 512-337-3776. Who do you want to see improved? Who do you want to have a big game this Saturday to help beat Kansas? They're playing over at DKR. You want to talk some NFL? Want to talk some college? Send in those texts, 512-337-3776. We'll be back the second hour of the Sports Complex coming up here on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex. Gonna get into some NFL talk. Maybe a little NBA if we have some time. Maybe some MLB. Just a little update for you. Not a lot of talk going on, but a little update for you before we get to that. Rangers do play on the airwaves tonight. 8 p.m. is pregame tonight. Keeping going with the Angels. Big series. We're down to the final week of MLB. So things are getting exciting. If you don't normally watch MLB, I know you may not watch till the playoffs. You can watch this week if you want to know, especially if you're a Rangers or an Astros guy. It's a good week. We'll get into that a little bit too. And of course, more of your text. You guys running the show like you always do. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line. Text us in if you want to talk some more Texas football. If you've got a position group you want to see that to stand up this week, who you want to see improve, who you want to see stand out. We know special teams. We know. But if you want, got one of those, send that in. 512-337-3776. You want to talk some more Cowboys? Think I'm crazy? You think I'm wrong? You think I'm right? Whatever you got. You got your own opinion. You got your own questions. Send those in. 512-337-3776. Getting back to the text line. Speaking of, we'll get to some of the more that these sent in. I want to see the offense click on all cylinders. They can be so much better. I agree. I think this offense is only kind of scratching at the potential in the passing game. Quinn Ewers has been doing good. You can tell he's a little gun shy. He doesn't want to go full on out. He doesn't want to risk it, which I don't really want him to. As long as the defense is playing there, there's going to be times this season where he may need to as the season progresses on. These next 2 weeks, he may have to kind of get a little bit more out there and get out of his comfort zone a little bit more. If the games get a little bit more high scoring, and if you're not pulling away, you may have to do that. But I'd like to see that too. I'd like to see the offense really do what it can do. But I think there's also a point against the Kansas, especially this week. You kind of just want to run the ball a little bit. You do want to run some clock. You don't want to actually leave your defense out on that field over and over again and let a Jalen Daniels go over the top on them. There's another good dog picture. Thank you to Bougie and Tank, some American Bulldogs there. Always nice to get the dog pictures here on National Dog Week. Don't give up the long ball, the secondary. Yes, we want to see that. DBs, too many breakdowns could be a killer against this offense. You don't want to see the ball over top. And it's not happening all the time. Like, they've defended a lot of deep balls. I know it's kind of been the point because it's really been the biggest weakness of this defense. They've early in games allowed some decent average in running, but by the fourth quarter, it kind of averages out, and they've been able to stop guys in the fourth quarter when they need to running the ball. It's that deep pass. That's really kind of been something that, teams can draw up, and, you're not going to get burned probably for 3 touchdowns, but you get burned for 2. If you get burned for 2 and they earn 2 on your own and maybe have a turnover in there, it's a lot of points to make up on the other side. Nervous about our ability to contain a dual threat quarterback. I'll tell you, I'm not as concerned because I don't think Jalen Daniels has done that as much this season. Partly, I think it was they didn't want to use it too much in non-conference play. He did sit out the first game of the season. The next 2, he didn't run a lot. Week 3, he did. He got, I think, 50 rushing yards in week 3. It still wasn't an amazing rushing performance. BYU was able to stay in front of him. But again, that's where I talk about linebacker play. And that's where David Benda and Jalen Ford and Anthony Hill, Anthony Hill's been that guy to be on quarterback coverage. And sometimes he overcommits, but he can also make great plays and make up a lot of distance real quick. That's going to be a big part of that game. I agree with you there. I would like to see more third down conversions, which means we need to not be stuck in long third downs. Yes. Getting yardage on the first couple of plays. Sark has a thing where, it worked against Alabama, which was throwing deep balls and taking chances on first down. He really likes to do that. The problem is he starts to get into that too much, and then first down long is an incompletion. Then he goes second down a run play, and he gets 3 yards. And then it's 3rd and 7. You get in that 3rd and long, and now you have to pull it out. And they've been doing okay at pulling those out, but you don't want to be in that position over and over and over again. And I think there's points where he'll start a game not doing that, and then he just gets a little antsy, and he wants to get that offense corked up. And we said running on all cylinders. He wants to have those first downs, and it can be annoying at points to watch as a fan. He's been calling the plays well enough and setting up defenses well enough this year that I don't want to criticize it too much. but it is something that you look at and say, if you could make this a little bit easier on the offense, you could probably even score some more points. I know, you may not get those explosive plays. You may not have that big double pass, but you could still move the ball and get down there. But then it goes into, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see the entire offense in the red zone. Red zone efficiency is a big one. Yeah, we can talk about the Cowboys. We'll talk about them in just a second. Red zone efficiency is difficult. It's a hard part of the game. But when you have a big target like JT Sanders, and you have an A.D. Mitchell and an Xavier Worthy spreading out, and then Jonathan Brooks who can come out, and I know he's dropped 2 passes this year, but you got to go back to him. If that's open, you got to go back to him. So I think they can improve on that red zone. I don't know if he's not pulling out all the tricks right now. You don't want to use it all in the first 4 weeks, but I think that red zone offense will improve. But yeah, it needs to improve. I agree with you as well. Some more good dog pictures out there. Pongo, 10 of 10, Pongo. Good dog right there. No risk it, no biscuit for the game. You got to throw the deep ball at points, but I don't always want to see it on first down. In terms of college football, who outside of Colorado do you think may be the next Kansas, a program that has completely flipped from non-existent to completely competitive? And I think that Kansas, when we look at it again, we can say Colorado was definitely the next one. I don't know. The problem with Kansas is Kansas always was a very competitive basketball school. So if we want to say maybe a Duke falls into this, another basketball program, their ranked team right now, they may be falling into that trend. But a school that's always had money around it, it comes down to money at this point. If you can offer some NIL, you're going to be able to get some of those veteran players that may have been promised something else when they were a freshman and now they're a junior, and the NIL deals never came through because they never got to start. They never got to that next step. And those guys are going to be hit the transfer portal, and then they're going to end up at the place like a Kansas or a Duke or somebody like that who is more of a basketball blue blood. Maybe a Wake Forest could come up. I know it's in a difficult conference, but a Wake Forest, maybe that steps up and becomes something. One of those schools, I would say, somebody that has a basketball lineage where they have some money put into basketball that then takes that money and the school says, hey, well, if we want to make more money to get better facilities for everybody, and if you're a basketball guy like at Kansas, they understand as good as Kansas basketball is, Kansas football is good, you'll make even more money. So I think that's where it's, if you want to say what program could do it, I think they're basketball schools right now because those schools have money coming into them anyway. But it's money. It's really the end of the day who can afford to help build a program quicker, build facilities, promise things coming out, hire good coaches, all of that. Chan there, I'm truly concerned because Kansas is better than Wyoming and Baylor. Yes, they are. They're better than Rice. They're not better than Alabama, though. And you are playing at DKR. I'd like to see the deep balls covered better. And Quinn Ewers nearly threw 2 picks down the sidelines to the backs. Yes, he did. He's missed a few, but he's been pretty good, and he didn't throw those picks. There was a few. There was a tip ball drill. There's some things where he could have been a pick, but they've been able to get away with it. So I will take them. I do. Yeah, I think that, Chan, I'm not as, look, this is, again, Texas so far, I haven't been extremely worried about any of those games. The Alabama game, of course, but I thought we'd be prepared for it. All of these games, I'm not really worried. I'm worried that Texas doesn't play up to their level. They are a good enough team to beat any of these teams. And I know we've said that before. It seems like a different level. They've seen that they've played it better than their competition in a lot of games. They've shown that they have the ability to pull away in these games. That's something big you'd like to be able to see. How much is the Mel Tucker situation in Michigan State looking for a new hire going to affect the Kansas players? I don't think that much this season. They're bought in. Lance Leipold's got him bought in. So you can kind of stick it to them and they can say maybe they'll lose a guy. But also in the transfer portal era, some of those guys may say, cool, I'll go to Michigan State. If Leipold goes, I'll go with him. I know there's some guys that won't get taken that wouldn't, may not want that. But right now, and if I'm Lance Leipold, I may not want to go to Michigan State. I know there may be more money there, but man, with everything that's happening, Mel Tucker fighting it, and then you've got, the scandals that happened a few years before that, it seems like something that you may just say, I need a little bit of space in between. Maybe a little bit of space in between. Let's talk a little Cowboys. Let's talk a little Cowboys for you before we get to the break. I do want to bring up, so this was something that I saw earlier today, and I think it's mainly RG3, but a couple other people have started to push the sentiment out because the Cowboys are playing the Patriots next week, and Zeke will be there, and Zeke had his best game of the season last week. We've had 80 rushing yards. That now people are starting to say everybody thought Zeke was dead and the Cowboys should have kept him. And that's the problem with the red zone, is the Cowboys should have kept him. And that's that. And that is complete and total BS. That's not real. The Cowboys should not have kept Zeke, because also if you keep Zeke Elliott, you can't keep Tony Pollard. You're not keeping two running backs at that value, especially when one of them, you're not keeping Zeke at the money he cost to basically play for you and get 5 to 10 carries a game, and then put him in the red zone when everybody knows what's happening. And by the way, those stats that he had this week are a bit inflated. He had some good runs. He had some good 14, 16-yard runs or whatever they were, but that was basically half of his production, maybe a little bit more, were kind of like 3 or 4 big runs. And then he had a lot of plays where he got stuck at the line of scrimmage. So I wouldn't say that Zeke really looks like he's fully back and he's the Zeke that was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't think that's that. I will say that if you're Dallas, I'd still be on the market to try and see if there's another running back out there. Not a Jonathan Taylor, not somebody who was really big, but when we saw what happened to Nick Chubb, when we see what happened to whoever else in the injuries and running backs to the NFL, we know they can happen. I don't want anything to happen to Tony Pollard, not at all. He currently has the most carries in the NFL. He has more carries than any other running back. 62 carries is the lead in the NFL for running backs. If something were to happen to him, if you need to really start to spell him, Rico Dottle looked okay, but are you going to put him in for 10 carries, 15 carries? Is that what you're going to do? Look, I think you should have drafted another running back other than Deuce Vaughn. I like Deuce Vaughn. I think he's good. Doesn't seem like he's going to be used that much this season. He's not somebody who's going to, if Tony Pollard goes down, is going to save you this season. He's not ready to get in. So now you have a spot of a running back who can do a few things but isn't going to get in. You have a spot on a quarterback that you traded for, which I don't mind trading for, but that's another roster spot that you can't get in. Rico Dottle can play well, but he's not going to get you a ton of snaps. So he's not there. So now in your offense, you were just taking up, you have multiple tight ends now because you don't have that guy. You got to have Ferguson out there. You've invested so much in projects that it seems more and more that this offense isn't built to win this season. And I know Brandon Cooks is there, and I know Amari Cooper is there, CeeDee Lamb's there. CeeDee Lamb's better than Amari Cooper. Right? Amari Cooper would have been great. I think Amari Cooper was a bigger loss than Zeke was. But Brandon Cooks can be in there. For whatever reason, they didn't seem bought in. I think you need to kind of have a sit-down with this team. I'd like to see you get another running back. I'm just going to say, I know a Texas guy, I'm a homer. There's probably a reason he's a healthy scratch. But Chicago has too many running backs. I may call Chicago and see if they want to ditch one of those running backs. Maybe one of them that played at Texas that's been a healthy scratch for the last 2 weeks. Didn't even suit up, did Foreman the last 2 weeks. I may call him. I may say, hey, do you want a 7th round pick for Deontay Foreman? 3 years or something like that. You're not playing him. Let us have him. I may do that. I'd love if the Cowboys get a tight end. I saw Kyle Pitts get the talk about Kyle Pitts today. I don't know if that's the guy I'd want to bring out a tight end because I'd like to have someone that blocks a little bit better. But yeah, you didn't get a tight end. You went for Ferguson. I think Ferguson will be okay by the end of the season. I'll tell you that much. I think the Ferguson connection will start to show up by midseason. I think will get better. So I'm not as worried about that. But do the Cowboys have the pieces? They have the pieces this year. Once you lost one player, and this is kind of what the Cowboys story seems to be year after year. It's so much built on hope and that no one gets hurt. And then a Trayvon Diggs goes down, and now you're kind of shuffling pieces, and you really need Mozzie Smith to progress a little bit faster than he's progressing so you can have less guys on the D-line to maybe help out in that secondary a little bit more, push back his safety a little bit. You need to have that. Your linebacker, when DeMarvion Overshawn went down, you don't really necessarily have the linebacker. I don't know what you're can do there if you're basically relying everything now on a quarterback that you're trying to put in situations where he can't win. Whether your red zone depth, you're not drawing up plays. you have Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb should be able to go up there and get the ball. If you want to trust Ferguson in that, and Ferguson's your guy, you can't use him as a blocker in the red zone. You have to have him out trying to go out there and being a red zone threat. You have to have that. If you want to have the Cowboys have real shots of being able to win those games against the Eagles, who look like they can be beat this year, I don't know if Jalen Hurts is a little hurt. I know they said he had flu-like symptoms last night, so maybe they'll be better, but they look like they have a little bit of vulnerability in Philadelphia. You may be able to go. You can beat the Giants. You can beat the Commanders. I think you still need another piece or two on this team. And I don't think you need to go out and get Zeke back. But I think you still need to get another running back on this team. And you need to try and go get a bruiser. And someone that can do something like that, but doesn't need to be that role. I think you need to try and use Ferguson and show me before the trade deadline. Show Cowboys fans. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm a Texans fan, but I root for the Cowboys. I do every week. I root for the Cowboys. I want them to do well. I want to see Ferguson used in the red zone better. I want to see the play calling in the red zone better, and I want to see you take care of Dak. I don't know. I just don't know about this Cowboys offense right now. When you look at the fact that Tony Pollard has 62 carries and he's carried the ball more than anybody else in the NFL, I wouldn't have predicted that through 3 weeks. How many of you would have said that Tony Pollard would lead the lead in carries in the first 2 weeks? And part of that is that they just blew everybody out in those first 2 weeks, and that they blew out the Giants, they blew out the Jets, so they ran the ball a bunch, and they don't have a bunch of running backs that they can stick out there and get first downs with. So they have to keep playing Tony Pollard because they don't have another guy. I don't know if you can make a trade for a tight end. I don't know if that tight end's out there, but I know there's running backs out there. That you can go get. Another news, the Jets did sign Trevor Siemian. They have brought in another quarterback, 31-year-old Trevor Siemian, couldn't stay in the starting lineup, tried with the Broncos for years, not when Nathaniel Hackett was there. He is now in there. Zach Wilson's still the quarterback for another week. Saleh didn't sound too sure about it, but he's there. And finally, a little NFL news, the fun news. That Travis Kelce's jersey spiked up 400+% after Taylor Swift showed up. What I really loved is Micah Parsons about this. Micah Parsons just got good attitude. This is Micah Parsons on his podcast talking about what it means for the NFL players that Travis Kelce was able to manifest Taylor Swift showing up.
Damn, you shot from deep and you scored. You Stephen Curry, my brother. You might be the new Steph of football. That's dope. I can't even lie. I think I want to see someone shoot at somebody else. The NFL, we up right now. City Boys is up. Hey, I challenge all my other NFL guys, start shooting from deep. Shoot from deep. Let's see if someone can get somebody like, I don't know. I got to think about this. We got to start shooting, brother. I am publicly shooting. Zendaya, shoot at Zendaya, something. We got to start going, brothers. I think Trav set the standard for this.
Set the standard. Trav set the standard, guys. Micah Parsons calling out his NFL players. We got to get out there and start getting them girls, getting them celebrities. Micah Parsons bringing it to the league. Someone should tell Tony Romo to call him and tell him that Tony Romo was ahead of the trend. It didn't work out for the Cowboys. We got to take a break. We'll get back to some of your texts. 512-337-3776. Chan, I always tell you, Jerry Jones, relying on hope. Smoking that hopium is what Jerry Jones is doing every single year. And I fall for it every year. Every year I fall for it. And then week 5, you're like, Jerry, you did it again. We're going to take a break. We come back. Keep texting in. 512-337-3776. We'll come back, talk a little NBA, a little MLB, and see what we're getting into here on the Sports Complex in the Horn. 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Playing all dog songs since it's National Dog Week. You can send in your dog pictures, 512-337-3776. Send in dog pictures, questions, comments, whatever you got about the world of sports. If you got anything for me about Texas football, if you got a little bit about the Cowboys, the Texans, there's reports the Texans that Jalen Petrie is looking like he may be able to come back out. Once he starts playing that safety position with Jimmy Ward, looked way different with Ward out on the field last week. And now you had Jalen Petrie, who's been a great cornerback. I know they lost Singletary, hopefully not for the full season, but he'll be able to come back. We're at week 3. Some of these guys that have been on the injured reserve are eligible to come back after week 4. So maybe coming back, you'll maybe get back a Juice Scruggs or a Titus Howard. We know he had the hand injury. We don't know what the progress is on that. Unfortunately, there may be some news on Laramie Tunsil, if he's coming back or not. You get some of those players back. This Texans team, the schedule is not that tough. If you look at their schedule, Texans have it where they could win 3 or 4 or 5 more games. I don't know if they're going to win 5 more, but, win a few more. Just get out of that basement. Get out of the basement. That's all you need this year. Get out of the too many injuries. I get it. But you still got to play like the Jets. I know the Cardinals are not great, but they may be tanking too. Who knows? The Cardinals got extra incentive to beat you because they got your pick. But you never know. You might be able to win some of these games. The AFC South is not exactly doing great this season. The Colts beat you. The Colts look okay, but, that may not last. We don't know about that. All that good stuff. I do want to talk about something in the NBA. We'll have a little bit of time. And we may play you something from Ian Rob B yesterday. Rob B's out, by the way. Congratulations to Rob B. Heard that they've had their baby girl. Love to Rob B and Mel, and just a great people, great couple there. Love both of them. But I'll play a clip from them yesterday. He was out this morning. I don't know. We have not talked to him, so I'm not sure when he'll be back. But I know that we have a clip yesterday about the Longhorns and their D-line. We may try and get to that if we have a little bit of time. But I do want to talk about the NBA first for a little thing. That the NBA, that there was a report today that the new trade favorite for Damian Lillard, that people in the league feel is the front runner to get Damian Lillard, which we know the whole Damian Lillard said he's going to the Miami Heat. That's basically, the report was he wanted out of Portland. He wants to go to Miami. Miami wants him. And then the report comes out that his agent has basically called any other team or anybody who's called him, I guess, was what they say. He said, I wasn't calling teams. They were calling me. Anybody who called him, he said, don't expect him to suit up ever for your team. He wants to go to the Heat, so don't even offer anything. The NBA then sent out a memo basically saying, if you try and pull this crap to ruin the league by everyone just deciding once they've served tenure in the league, they got 10 years in or 8 years or whatever it is, and they get their supermax that we agreed in the CBA to give you guys supermaxes so you would stay on teams, that you decide you get your supermax and now you want out. And I'm not even getting into, I get that Portland has not been the best place for him, but you can't say I will only go to Miami. You can't say I don't like all these guys just picking and choosing where they go and big threes and all that, and then you just pick and choose to go to Miami. But the report is Toronto is the front runner right now, and it makes sense in one thing, that Toronto has a lot of pieces. They haven't been able to put it together, but they are able to get pieces that they can put together. Pascal Siakam is in there, and OJ Anunoby, that he's in that trade he could be in that trade as well. You have Grady Dick, you just drafted, the kid out of Kansas. There's a few players on this team that you may be able to, sweeten the pot a little bit. That's better than a Tyler Hero and no draft and basically a couple draft picks that are not even going to be great draft picks necessarily. That first round draft pick in the NBA is a lot different than that first round draft pick in the NFL, where people take a first round draft pick in the NFL value. There's 7 rounds in the NFL. Your last pick, Cowboys get Mozzie Smith, who's not great, but he's an okay player. Your 28th, 29th pick of the first round in the NBA may never even play for you. He may never play meaningful minutes in there. Like, everyone past 15 is kind of a crapshoot in the NBA draft. You don't know if they're ever going to make the roster. You don't know if they're ever going to be a starter or get to that level. basically everyone in the first round of the NFL draft, you're shooting probably an 80% success rate that they'll start for your team at some point. So if you're going to say that first round pick, if it's 20 or below, it's not really that valuable. That's kind of like a 4th or a 5th round pick for the NFL, maybe a third, but I'd say 4th or 5th round pick. So that trade from the Heat isn't great. And I know that a lot of other executives probably don't want to see Pat Riley pulling his weight around and getting whatever he wants again. So that's why the NBA had to send out that memo. I know they're trying to, they're in the talks of trying to expand the league, that, they're hoping to at some point be able to expand the league to another few teams and get a Las Vegas market. They'd love to have Las Vegas. I know why everybody wants to go there, and people can say any way they want about Vegas, but the casinos will buy the tickets. You'll sell tickets no matter what. It's a great place to own a team because you'll get tickets. People want to be a part of it, especially if you pick cool colors and a cool jersey. People want to be on board with Las Vegas. So I get why you want to have that team. Seattle wants another team. Get it. So 2 more teams could easily be there. But this kind of picking and choosing and veterans not wanting to stay and people not want to stay on teams to really build with teams. And I know, not saying Dame didn't build with Portland. He gave him plenty of chance. But, man, if you're Dame Lillard, and that's where you end up, if you get traded to Toronto, and not a Toronto team, and the Toronto team missing some of the players, missing 2 or 3 of the big pieces that would make them an outlier Eastern Conference playoff team. You miss all those guys now. And you got Jakob Poeltl and some other guys, and, this isn't the team that won the NBA Finals anymore. Those guys are long gone. And now you're trying to start a rebuilding project there. I get why Portland does it. Makes sense why Portland does it. I don't know if Dame Lillard, if that's what he wants to have happen. So that is a big news story today to see if they're serious. We know that Philadelphia is, of course, in on that because, Daryl Morey wants to be on any big trade. Any big name is out there. He wants to be there. The Clippers will, of course, call for him. Everyone's going to be making the phone call. Toronto is just interesting because Toronto has has a big package they can offer. But this is the problem. If Portland doesn't really go for it and Portland asks for too much and they said, we want all of your players, basically we want to gut your team to get you Dame Lillard, then all the teams will pull back. If that's what you're asking for, if you want 4 starters and draft picks for Dame Lillard, well, then no one's going to offer that. And you're going to have to go up to take that Miami deal, which you don't want to take either because I know you want to make Dame happy, but in reality, you don't want to get screwed over, and you're getting screwed over on that deal. And once everybody else hangs up the phone, you're not going to get there. Toronto was 10th in the league last year. They give up a bunch of players for Dame. I don't know if that boosts them up. We know that, Philadelphia is having problems right now, but they'll still be in the playoffs. Brooklyn, probably going to be just as good, if not better, next year when they got these young guys in there. Atlanta, they're in the last year of that experiment of if DeJounte Murray and Trae Young are going to work. Got a game with, is Chicago going to be in that picture? Indiana's going to move back up? I don't know. It just seems like a weird trade for me, but I like that somebody else is in there. I like that the conversation is picked back up again in the NBA. Let's get back to Texas football real quick. E and Rod B on Hook 'em Up every morning, 6 to 11 right here on the Horn. We're talking about the Texas defensive line, how good they looked. Let's listen in to some E and Rod B from yesterday morning talking about the Texas defensive line, get you a little bit more pumped up. I just want to give you a little Kool-Aid. We maybe talked about some problems that Texas had. Let's give you a little Kool-Aid before we get out of here today.
All right. Texas coming off a huge dominating win over the Baylor Bears. Longhorns now ranked number 3 in the country. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian coming up in the post game from his comments from the post game. But I thought the moment in the game, it was early, that I knew Texas wasn't in any real trouble of losing this game or really the game being competitive or close was pretty much early watching the defensive line overwhelm the Baylor O-line. And whether it be in the run game or whether it be in pass protection, they just couldn't block Texas D-line. They couldn't. And they couldn't block Byron Murphy at the point of attack, even though sometimes they were trying to double team him. And there were so many different players they were able to get in the backfield, penetrate, make plays for the Texas defensive line and defensive front really overall, that I really had no concern that Baylor was going to be able to move the ball consistently. Now, they threw the deep ball and got some chunk yardage plays a couple of times, but that was about it. But there was nothing they really could do, that would neutralize the Texas defensive front. They just didn't have the lines of scrimmage to keep up with Texas. And hopefully that continues to be the case for the rest of the season, is that Texas overwhelms opponents. We're going to talk about this in the Kansas game too. When we talk about Kansas and preview that for the rest of the week, that I think if you look at the lines of scrimmage for Texas, offense and defense, that's where Texas should be separating. Hell, even going back to their latest commitment, right, the 5-star offensive tackle out of Mater Dei, the best tackle in the country. That's where Texas is going to be separating from their opponents, and that's where they separated from Baylor, was on the lines of scrimmage. Well, Baylor just couldn't keep up.
For everything this weekend that was unexplainable, and you can't believe your eyes, you're watching this, there was nothing in that game that was surprising. We talked all last week that Baylor doesn't match. I mean, this was Texas. This is a program in Texas on the rise, that they're getting better. Their lines of scrimmage are getting more and more dominant. And Baylor's not good. This is why there's panic in Baylor about Dave Aranda.
I'll give you credit for your Wyoming comment. You got it.
What's that?
I think you said Wyoming could beat Baylor, and not agree with you now. Man. After watching it. I think you're right.
Because nothing that you saw on film because Texas, by the way, Texas fans over the last 12 years at times know this. When you talk about Dave Aranda, hey, Dave, make some adjustments. Rod, it's hard to adjust around a bad offensive line. It's hard to make adjustments around a bad offense or a defensive line. Like, what do you do? I mean, you just said it. The Longhorns had 2 sacks on the first series. They had 3 sacks on the first 2 drives. They couldn't block Texas. And you're like, well, do something. Well, what do we want them to do? We can't move them. Actually, they're whipping us. That's a problem for Dave Aranda. Kansas will be much better this week. That's a much better football team. I thought Wyoming was a better football team than Baylor, and they'll see better groups. What you like about Texas is they showed up and they finally played a good first half, right? They put 28 points on the board in the first half. They had for the 4th game in a row, they had a 21-point quarter, Rod, which, this is becoming a common thing about how explosive they are. The second quarter this time around was a 21-point quarter for Texas. They did it in the third quarter against Rice. They did it in the fourth quarter against Bama and Wyoming. And this time they did it in the second quarter. And the Baylor game was over at that point. 28-6 was the score at the time. And then they pitched a second-half shutout defensively against an inept Baylor team.
Well, and I love their sudden change defense, too, because there were times where Texas could have given up some more points, especially after muffed punts. And you talk about coaching. Yeah, exactly. You talk about coaching points that Texas can still go into this week to improve on. Well, obviously, kick returns are a big part of that. A muffed kickoff return, too, from Keelan Robinson. He just recovered it. Added 2 muffed punts that they lost from Jay Witt and from Xavier Worthy. And the defense, they were stout in that moment, and they used both their back and gave up a field goal at one time. And like I said, in that situation, a field goal is a win for the defense. And then I believe they kept Baylor off the board in the next time around. So Texas defense looks like they're the real deal. That's why everybody's excited about the Kansas game, and you should be. This will be the first test for the Texas defense for an offense with an actual identity. Bama had players, but their offense had no identity at all. They didn't even know what the hell they were.
Maybe Bama found their identity in the second half of that Ole Miss game because Jalen Milroe had a heck of a half after having a struggle in the first half. So we'll talk about it, and we'll hear from Sark coming up throughout the morning. Also, we'll get you some facts on this 5-star commitment. Longhorns, how about this? Longhorns now, as we sit here this morning on the 25th of September, have a commitment from the number 1 pass rusher in the country and the number 1 left tackle in the country for the class of 2018.
Yeah, Colin Simmons tweeted out that practice is going to be fun.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And we'll tell you about Brandon Baker and how that plays out. Number 1 edge rusher in the country from Duncanville, now the number 1 left tackle prospect in the country from Mater Dei High School.
There's some good stuff from the defensive line from Ian Rob B on Hook 'em Up. We did get another text in here from my man Chan. Any news on the big-time basketball recruit that may be considering Texas? You put in Ty Ferguson. I'm going to guess that's an autocorrect. Trey Johnson is who I'm guessing you're talking about. Who's a 5-star recruit that Texas was kind of – he was a little soft on Texas. He's in his top 6, I believe, is all he's revealed. But most people are saying it is between Texas and Baylor where he is going to decide to go. So this is a big year. I don't know if he is going to – how long he's waiting to make his decision. I've not seen anything of when he plans to make his decision, but you may assume that he may wait for a little bit of for basketball to get played and see how he feels. And and see how these two teams are going, but I know he was hanging out with Arch Manning, so if this Texas football team continues to do well, maybe that'll play into the decision. If it's Texas versus Baylor, we just beat the crap out of them in football. Maybe we can get Trey Johnson from them too. That would be great for Texas basketball. It would be a good step. We're going to take one more break before we get out of here. I'll give you a little bit more of an MLB update on the way out. Some more of your texts. Love the dog picks, by the way. Shout out Sable and Bob Barker and Gumbo, Harley, all 10 out of 10 dogs. Love the dogs here on National Dog Week. Send them in, 512-337-3776. We'll get into some more of your texts, give you what the last call is going on tonight, and get you ready for some big baseball action that is happening on the station. It's happening across the world of MLB. We're coming to the final week. Get all that here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 and 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex on a Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for everybody for playing along on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776. I appreciate you guys keeping it going on the text line for us, keeping us kicking along right here on a Sports Complex on a Tuesday. It's my man Bruce. You know, I know there's a Saucer show on Saturday at Hanover's at 10 p.m. I know that. You don't have to text that in. It's not a 512 Friday yet, though. Maybe it'll show up on a 512 Friday that there's a Saucer show this Saturday at Hanover's, 10 p.m. After Longhorns play. Maybe it'll pop up. Maybe I'll play it. Shout out to Chan, too. Everybody on the text line. Very good. Don't pronounce the T's in Toronto. Do you pronounce the T in Raptors? That's the question for that texter who sent that in. Tonight, Rangers magic number 3 to get playoff spot, 4 to win the AL West. Astros magic number is 4 to win to just make the playoffs. 5 games left for the Astros, 6 games left for the Rangers. Christian Javier going up against Kirby tonight for the Astros against the Mariners. Huge game. Be safe out there. Be kind. Keep your underwear clean. And we'll see you next week. Or see you tomorrow. Peace.